honey dip, summertime fine jury dripping. Seen you on pickings with a bunch of chickens.
Selfies aimed at your dome piece. Father, you see King Pose.
Someone like me dead. Okay, my goon hungry. His eyes is red, but he clumsy. Go.
Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
Heavy rocks on, had spite on my leather with my idol on it. Ball blowers and shit.
The world in the palm of your hand. 23 million of useful land.
Reunited, double LP, world excited. Struck a match to the underground industry.
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
Try to intrude, loop my voice on the LP. Martini on the slang rock, certified chap.
Rap with some of this and some of that. Hold up, what? I thought I saw a pretty fat.
Tip, you wanna come sweating, stressing, contesting. You got the soft swords at the midsection.
Don't go on the war with the melting pot.
It's the Method Man for short, Mr. Map. Move, yo.
Eat with the English, extinguish styles, extremists. Forehead beamers run wild as the kid with
Making a tape now. Ray gotta get a plate now. Ignorant and mad young.
You think you know Wu-Tang Clan, right? 9 rappers from Staten Island. Kung Fu samples. Hoodies with the giant W cream blasting from every car stereo in the 90s. But what if I told you that wasn't even half the story? Because behind the grimy beats and Shaolin wisdom was a chaotic, messy saga that the public barely saw. We're talking FBI surveillance, royalty beefs, million-dollar betrayals, and a tragic death that nearly broke the group in half. Wu-Tang wasn't just a rap group. They were a movement built on loyalty that eventually turned into something way more complicated. The crazy part? It all started with one man, a solo artist who flopped, disappeared, and came back with a blueprint that would change hip-hop forever. But here's the twist. What began as a brotherhood slowly started unraveling. As the money rolled in and egos inflated, some members felt left out, others got caught up in legal drama, and one didn't live to see how it all played out. So yeah, Wu-Tang made history, but at what cost? Let's get into it. Before there was Wu-Tang, there was just a kid named Robert Diggs. He was broke, hungry, and bouncing between boroughs. But he had a vision, one that nobody in the industry took seriously. He went by Prince Rakeem back then, tried the solo route, even got a deal, but the album flopped hard. Most artists would have faded out after that. But instead of quitting, RZA locked in, like mad scientist locked in. He went underground, studied production like it was sacred scripture, and started building what would become the most unpredictable, chaotic, and powerful rap crew the game had ever seen. He linked up with his cousins, Giza the Genius and Old Dirty Bastard, and handpicked 7 other MCs from Staten Island and Brooklyn, and each one raw, street smart, and completely different. Method Man had the charisma. Ghostface had the pain in his voice. Raekwon was the hustler. Deck was the assassin. U-God had the deep bass. Masta Killa came in quiet but calculated. This wasn't a boy band. This was a lyrical army. But here's where it gets wild. RZA wasn't just throwing a bunch of rappers on tracks. He mapped out a 5-year domination plan. Who would go solo? When? How their styles would evolve. Like a chessboard, every move was intentional. And in 1992, they tested the waters with an underground banger. Protect Ya Neck. No radio play, no label backing, just raw energy, pressed on vinyl, sold out of trunks. The streets went crazy. The industry? Still skeptical. Labels didn't want a group this big. Too risky, too messy. So RZA did something no one expected. He negotiated a deal with Loud Records that was unheard of at the time. Wu-Tang would sign as a group, but each member could sign separate solo deals anywhere else. It was basically rap socialism. One brand, 9 bosses. It was risky. It was genius. And it worked. Because the moment Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, dropped in 1993, everything changed. Wu-Tang wasn't just different in sound. They were different in strategy. Most rap crews got signed as a group, and stayed boxed in by one label, one vision. But Wu? They hacked the whole system. That Loud Records deal RZA secured, it was basically a loophole disguised as a contract. Wu-Tang would drop albums as a collective under Loud, but each member was free to ink solo deals wherever they wanted. Think about that. RZA turned Wu-Tang into a brand that could multiply across the industry. It wasn't just about the group. It was about creating 9 separate revenue streams, 9 solo legacies, all feeding back into the same dynasty. Method Man signed with Def Jam, ODB went to Elektra, Raekwon stayed with Loud. It was like they were franchising themselves. And the labels, who initially passed on them, were now lining up with open checkbooks. And the fans? They couldn't get enough. Every solo album felt like a new chapter in the same gritty universe. It was the Wu cinematic universe before Marvel even figured that out. And here's the thing. This wasn't just business savvy. It was cultural power. Wu-Tang wasn't just climbing the charts. They were taking over the streets, the fashion, the lingo. Suddenly, everybody had a Wu hoodie. Every mixtape DJ was begging for a verse. They weren't playing the game. They were rewriting it. And right when people thought they were peaking, they dropped a debut album that still hits like a sledgehammer over 30 years later. But we'll get to that in a second. When Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, dropped in 1993, it didn't sound like anything else out. This was not polished. It was dirty, cold, basement-recorded madness layered with kung fu movie clips, dusty soul samples, and verses that felt like street sermons. No hooks. No flashy choruses. Just raw bars and grimy beats. And somehow, it worked. Protect Ya Neck, The Mystery of Chess Boxin', Wu-Tang Clan Ain't Nothing to F With, and of course, Cream, that track alone, a cultural reset. Cash rules everything around me wasn't just a hook. It became a motto, a mantra, a movement. But here's the crazy part. The album wasn't even meant to be a mainstream smash. It was for the streets. And yet, it cracked open the industry. Suddenly, Staten Island wasn't just the forgotten borough. It was Shaolin. Wu turned the hood into mythology. Even the group itself felt like comic book heroes. Each member had an alias, a persona, a signature flow. RZA was the abbot. GZA was the genius. ODB? The madman wildcard. It was like assembling the Avengers, except everyone could rap better than you. And let's not forget the aesthetic. The W logo? Iconic. The fashion? Game-changing. Wu-Wear became the first rap group clothing line to go international. Kids who didn't even know the lyrics were rocking Wu gear just to be part of the wave. This wasn't just a group. It was a world. And it looked like nothing could stop them. Until the cracks started to show. If Wu-Tang was a family, then Old Dirty Bastard was the wild, hilarious, untamable heart of it. You never knew what he was going to say or do, and that's exactly why fans loved him. He'd show up to award shows with no shirt and a bag of snacks. He once cashed food stamps on camera with an MTV crew. And in 1998, when Wu-Tang lost a Grammy to Diddy, ODB literally stormed the stage mid-speech and said, "Wu-Tang is for the children." Iconic? Yes. But behind the chaos was a man falling apart. ODB was dealing with mental health struggles, substance abuse, and legal issues that kept piling up. Arrests for assault, drug charges. He even escaped court-mandated rehab once. Straight up vanished and became a fugitive. The media called him a menace. The fans called him misunderstood. But the truth? He was spiraling. Fast. And then came the moment nobody was ready for. In 2004, just 2 days before his 36th birthday, ODB collapsed in the Wu-Tang studio. He never got back up. Official cause of death, drug overdose. But to the clan, and to hip-hop, it felt deeper than that. They hadn't just lost a rapper. They lost a brother, a voice, a soul that couldn't be replaced. It shook the entire group. Wu-Tang's wildest member was gone. And with him, something in the group changed forever. But that wasn't the only storm brewing behind the scenes. Because while the world was mourning ODB, someone else had been watching the clan, and it wasn't a fan. Here's the part they don't tell you in the documentaries. The FBI was watching Wu-Tang Clan. Not like keeping tabs on rappers watching. We're talking declassified files, criminal investigations, and rumors that Wu wasn't just a group, but a criminal enterprise. According to FBI documents, the government suspected Wu-Tang members of being involved in everything from drug trafficking to illegal firearms, even murder. The files alleged that their record label was being used as a front for street activity. Let that sink in. The most iconic rap crew in the world was being tracked like a cartel. Now, to be fair, no formal charges were ever brought against the group as a whole, and some members have openly said the whole thing was exaggerated. But the investigation added a layer of heat they didn't need, especially while still grieving ODB. And behind the scenes, the unity that once defined Wu-Tang was cracking. Some members started feeling like RZA was pulling too many strings, controlling the sound, the business, the brand. It was his vision that built Wu-Tang, but now it felt like he was the only one driving it. Raekwon, Ghostface, and others voiced frustration over the direction of the music. U-God even ended up suing RZA over unpaid royalties. Fans started wondering, was the Brotherhood real or just part of the myth? And then came the cherry on top of the confusion. A secret album, one copy, sold to the worst possible person. Wu-Tang never fully broke up, but they definitely broke off. And that's when the reinventions began. Method Man was the first to pop off solo. Smooth voice, street edge, movie star looks. His debut album Tickle went platinum. And when he teamed up with Mary J. Blige for I'll Be There For You, he crossed into mainstream stardom like it was nothing. Then came the acting gigs. How High, The Wire, and a whole new era of Method Man, now pushing 50, married and shredded like a Marvel hero. Dude basically Benjamin Buttoned himself. RZA, the mastermind, took a hard left into Hollywood. He wasn't just producing anymore, he was directing. Scoring films like Kill Bill, acting in American Gangster, and even launching tech and fashion ventures. From grimy basements to red carpets, RZA was playing chess on a whole new board. Giza, the genius, went the intellectual route. He dropped Liquid Swords, still considered a top-tier Wu album, and then started giving lectures at MIT and Harvard. Yeah, Harvard. Wu-Tang was literally in Ivy League classrooms. Ghostface Killah kept it street, but made it art. His solo albums like Supreme Clientele became cult classics. He was dropping emotional bars about love, loss, and trauma, all wrapped in slang-heavy cinematic verses. Plus, he stayed touring, raising his kids, and even launched his own brand of coffee and wine. Real grown man rap energy. Raekwon got deep into business too. He dropped his autobiography, launched a wine label, and kept releasing music while staying out of the spotlight drama. Low-key, he aged like fine wine, literally and figuratively. And even the quieter members carved out lanes. Inspecta Deck linked with 7L and Esoteric to form Czarface, a rap meets comic book trio that's been dropping consistent heat for years. U-God stayed active despite money struggles, even writing a brutally honest memoir. Masta Killa, still making music, still keeping it chill. They weren't just rappers anymore. They were entrepreneurs, educators, actors, authors, each member navigating their own comeback arc on their own terms. But just when things started feeling stable, they dropped an album that sparked another round of chaos. And this time, it involved a pharma bro, a single golden CD, and millions of dollars. Okay, so picture this. It's the mid-2010s. Wu-Tang has been quiet. Members are doing their own thing. And out of nowhere, they announce something insane. A secret album. Only one copy. No streaming, no download, no mass release. Just one physical album, locked in a silver case like it's the Infinity Gauntlet, titled Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. The idea? Treat it like fine art, like a one-of-one Picasso. Whoever bought it would own the music and decide if anyone else could ever hear it. Now at first, it sounded kind of genius, mysterious, high concept, Wu-Tang's final flex. But then, things got awkward. Because the buyer was Martin Shkreli. Yup, that guy. The pharma bro who jacked up the price of a life-saving drug overnight and became the internet's most hated man. He bought the album for $2 million, and the backlash hit fast. Fans were furious. Why sell your legacy to someone like him? Even members of Wu-Tang were like, wait, who made this deal? RZA tried to distance himself from it, saying they didn't know who was buying it, but the damage was done. It felt like a betrayal. Wu-Tang, the group that preached about the children and the streets, had just handed their art to a villain straight out of a Netflix doc. And that wasn't the only money mess going on. U-God sued RZA for unpaid royalties. ODB's estate was fighting to get the money he was owed. Even Inspector Deck admitted his debut solo album was delayed because a flood destroyed all his original recordings. The empire RZA built? It was cracking. Not because of the fans, but because of what was happening inside. And yet, despite all the drama, lawsuits, and bad decisions, Wu-Tang never fully broke apart. They just morphed into something else. But could they ever get back what they had? So what does a rap group built on chaos, kung fu, and raw bars look like 30 years later? Well, surprisingly grounded. Some Wu-Tang members are still grinding like it's 94. Others have slowed down. But nearly all of them are still here, still working, still evolving. Method Man is a walking glow-up. He's 52, but looks 32, hitting red carpets, crushing gym routines, staying private with his longtime wife, and talking openly about how fitness helped him battle depression. He's proof you can survive the industry and come out stronger. Ghostface Killah is still touring, still recording, still fighting diabetes, and still rapping with the same emotion and edge that made him a fan favorite. He's even got a son stepping into the rap game now. Raekwon is balancing bars and business. His wine brand is doing numbers. He dropped a memoir, and he stayed mostly out of the drama, playing the long game. Giza is teaching chess and giving lectures at universities like Harvard and MIT. Wu-Tang Clan is for the children, remember? RZA? Still moving like a boss, directing films, producing soundtracks, investing in startups. But even with all the success, he's faced backlash from within. The control he once had over the group? Not everyone wants it anymore. U-God, after years of feeling left behind, told his truth in a memoir and sued RZA over missing royalties. Inspector Deck, arguably the most underrated in the group, admitted he never got the solo love he deserved, partly because a literal flood wiped out his debut album. And yet, he's still rhyming, still relevant. And then there's the shadow of ODB. Even after all this time, his absence is still felt. His estate is still fighting for his cut. His legacy is still tangled in pain, love, and what-ifs. But here's the thing. Wu-Tang never needed a chart-topping comeback to stay relevant. Their comeback is their longevity. They tour. They drop solo projects. They teach. They act. They build brands. And they remind the world, in their own messy, unapologetic way, that Wu-Tang really is forever. But forever doesn't always look like the movies. Sometimes it's lawsuits and therapy. Sometimes it's fitness and fatherhood. Sometimes it's silence between old friends who built something legendary and never quite figured out how to protect it. Still, when cream comes on at a party, everybody turns up like it's 1993. Wu-Tang didn't just make music. They made a blueprint. They flipped the industry, survived loss, lawsuits, FBI investigations, and their own inner demons. And somehow, they're still here. Older, wiser, a little messier, but still standing. They weren't perfect. Not even close. But that's kind of the point. Wu-Tang was never about clean narratives. They were about realness, brotherhood, chaos, brilliance, and pain, all mixed together like a beat made in a dusty basement studio. So the question is, did Wu-Tang beat the system? Or did the system just let them survive long enough to become legends? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know your personal favorite Wu-Tang moment, verse, or member. Because love them or hate them, you can't talk about hip-hop without talking about Wu.